Hi, everybody. My name is Riccardo. I'm a brand photographer and creative producer. I'm here today with Jon Scott, who is the creative director of TOC. Jon, do you want to tell us a bit more about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, well, firstly, yeah, thanks for inviting me for an espresso. So my name's Jon Scott. I founded and I'm creative director of branding agency TLC, and we work primarily for charities, NGOs, and foundations to help build brands and create campaigns to help build awareness and help them grow and create more impact. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jon. So today we're gonna have an espresso. I know you had already your espresso, so you're having a tea today, which is fine. Don't worry, I don't hold it against you. But the topic of today it's origin story, which is a topic that I'm very dear to me. So we're gonna have just a chat about how to find your origin story. You want to tell us a bit more about what is an origin story, first of all?
Well, I mean, an origin story in the context of a business or an organization is really the events that led up to how that business came to exist. And an origin story is very much a human story. And it's that moment of realization, it's that chance encounter, it's the kind of kitchen table, it's the frustration of something not being available. It's working in the garage, very famously, like Amazon and Apple all started their businesses, in garages, and there are pictures on the internet of the famous garages where so the origin story is from in the context of a business is very much the kind of the part of the authenticity of a business or an organization, and it's very much forms part of the character of a business. So that's kind of how I would describe an origin story. um,
That's great. Yeah. No, that's very interesting. I mean, you just talked about something that I'm also very passionate about, which is authenticity. So what do you think? In a way, it's important for brands to really embrace that and to really kind of discover and to tell their origin story. And is it? Have you noticed like a shift perhaps in the last few months? So is today more relevant perhaps to talk about origin stories? What do you think?
I mean, I think there's definitely more. There's more pressure on organisations to be authentic. That customers are seeking out more authentic relationships with brands. So the importance of telling that origin story becomes part of how you can be more authentic. And there are there's a few examples I can think of. One is in the charity sector. There's an organization called Charity Water, who it was set up by Scott Harrison, who was a playboy who was a club promoter, and he kind of got involved in the club world in New York, and sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and he kind of got burnt out. He went to seek some refuge and get a clear head. He basically went and did some kind of charity work, and discovered the issue around access to clean water. So he had this moment of realization and went, right, I've got to do something about this. And anyway, that whole kind of transformation story that he went through personally became part of the promotion of within the first few years. You can still go and watch his story. I think he may have even done a TED talk around it. But he certainly spent a lot of the time promoting the charity through his own journey to setting the charity up. You know, Airbnb, you know, the very famous, you know, hotel booking platform that we all now know. You know, there was, you know, their origin story sort of played a very big part in their concept, you know, their whole concepts. You know, they basically saw a gap in the market in the hotel industry, and basically just went, right, well, let's just get some air mattresses and start renting out our room to as an alternative to a hotel. And that's how they got the name Airbnb, was from the air mattresses. And
Oh, really?
it became, you know, it became an integral part of the brand and the whole ethos and positioning of the brand. And you know, so, you know, the origin story, you know, telling the origin story adds the authenticity, but it also, if you embrace it, it actually becomes part of the brand. I mean, Monzo is another one, just very quickly. You know, Monzo, huge challenger brands, and basically they're you know, they were right at the kind of up to the nail to get their whole brands kind of created, and they literally had like something like an hour and a half left to make decisions about their brand. So their designer was like, oh well, I don't know what color you should be, you might as well just be the color of my trainers, which was this really bright coral color, which has now made them, you know, the brand that they are, very instantly recognizable by their, you know, their bright coral cards. So,
Wow. Yeah.
you know, embracing your origin story
Yeah.
and actually making it part of the experience
Yeah.
is definitely something that you know, can help be part of the success of a business. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. I didn't know these stories about Airbnb and Monzo, so thank you for sharing that. I mean, they're fantastic and so easy to tell as well, which I like. I think an origin story has to be quite snappy and just really short and memorable as well. And it's great how they translate it into the design as well, and the name as well of the brand. So that's
Yeah.
very interesting. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, going back to the second half of this espresso. Um, uh, so how can we tell our origin story? How does a brand or an entrepreneur tell his own origin story? Have you got any? Is there a structure to follow? So how can we tell us an origin story?
Yeah. I mean, there isn't a set structure, but I think, you know, like any story, you know, need to basically think back. I mean, depending on when your business or organization formed, but it's really thinking back about, you know, where that moment of change happened. So like any sort of classic kind of film, you know, beginning, it's that, find that where was the moment of change, um, and mark that, you know, and then start, you know, writing down the time. So what was the date? You know, what was the, you know, where was the places? You know. So you could talk about a specific location, so San Francisco or, you know, London. So marking a place in as a location, a time, but also, you know, just defining the characters that were part of that. So going back to Monzo, you know, they were very much, they started in the kind of financial crisis. So whenever they talk about their origin story, it was born out of the kind of a financial crisis and the need for a more flexible kind of banking solution. You know, so it's really just thinking about the characters, the time, the place, um, and the sort of cultural, you know, backdrop. So during a financial crash or the hottest summer of, you know, 2008. So, you know, painting a picture, I think is really what you're looking to do.
Yeah, it's very interesting actually because it's you're right. You know, if you do that, you're really painting a picture, and it's so much easier to for people to really visualize
Yeah.
what's your brand about, and of course what's your story. So I never thought about that. So thank you. So what about what about your story? Because I'm also interested in your origin story. So what's your origin story, Jon?
Well, my origin story started back in 2016, and it was well, one of the main protagonists was my sister. So she worked in the charity sector. So she worked to help provide. She worked in the provide services for domestic violence, specifically legal aid, and there was kind of not the right processes in place to get the support for legal aid for people suffering domestic violence. So she was like, right, there's nothing we can do as an organisation until that law has changed. So she got together a whole group of other organisations and took the government to court, which is no mean feat, by the way. So yeah, if you're thinking about doing it, it's very difficult. She took it to court, they won. So it was a real, it was a real moment of inspiration for me. And I was like, well, okay, what can I do? So I was like, okay, I'm going to set up my own agency, and I'm going to support very specifically the businesses or the organizations and charities that are, creating real impact for needs. So that was sort of the origin story for the sort of birth of my agency.
Wow, that's really inspiring in a way. So it's yeah, it's almost like it's an origin story based on an origin story.
Oh, absolutely.
Way, no, I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, that's the thing. That's, all stories are the knock-on effects of, that's why you end up with, 3 film trilogies, or in Harry Potter world, what was it, 8 films,
Yeah. So
there's always a story before the story, so. Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to see the Jon Scott saga soon in the series. So that would be quite fun, or maybe the Espresso saga. I don't know. Anyway, Jon, so it's been very, very inspiring. I've learned a lot. So I hope also the people who are watching this video will will learn something and will be able to apply some of these. Some of the things that we discussed. Is there any final things you want to say, or any final takeaways, or shall we? I don't know.
No, I just think the importance of characters and telling a human story. I think that would be the biggest takeout, because that's what creates the deepest connections with audiences. So that would be my passing.
That kind of emotional connection there, and powers are so amazing in that sense. So yeah, okay. Thank you, Jon, so much. And I leave it to your tea now. And I had a coffee, but I leave it to your tea. And thank you so much. See you very soon.
Riccardo. Bye bye.
Bye.